The Witch was recently released from the fine folks at Lionsgate on Blu-ray and DVD. This is just the basic Blu-ray with the digital HD code for, I believe it's just Vudu only. Probably one of the more mixed reviewed films of the year. I think there's some people that just absolutely love it. I think it's great. Personally, I'll say that up front. I think it's a really great movie. Some people don't like it. And I guess what is this was a pretty big release film. It actually kind of got a theatrical release. And, you know, for most people, when they go to the theaters, they're just going to see a movie that gives them a good excuse to either see a bunch of, like, I don't know, silly gore stuff going on, or maybe a whole bunch of jump scares so they can be jumping in their date's lap for the majority of the date. But I'm sure they were pretty shocked when they got this, because this is more or less like an indie art house horror film. It's got a very slow nature about it, but it's got a very spooky and methodical nature as well. But it ends up, you know, being way, way more positive than any negative. But it's not like your typical mainstream type horror film, because most people would go, and they probably heard about the goat in it, you know, Black Phillip, I believe is his name, it's in the movie. And they probably thought it was like a killer goat movie or something like that, I don't know. And it had the little silly Church of Satan that actually approved it, which is kind of hilarious in some ways, because that's almost a self-parody in itself. But the way this is you know, it's like back in the Pilgrim days, and this family, they get banished, I should say, from their colony for some reasons, and they're forced to seek out and do things on their own. And it's this one older girl, and her dad and her mom, and then she's got a little baby sister, baby brother, and another brother that's kind of like in between. And there's also a baby involved. And really, this isn't a spoiler, but what sets forth like the whole events of the film is she's supposed to be watching the baby, and just for a split second it disappears, and we find out that there's a witch in the woods that did get that child, and stuff that comes from that kind of sets forth for the rest of the film. And the family pretty well seems cursed, and we have to figure out if it's, you know, folklore, or if there's something really satanic going on. Is it the witches? Is it the goat? You know, it's just it seems silly probably to have somebody explain it, but the end results are a lot better than it actually sounds. It has some really, really freaky stuff in there, and it starts off with probably the worst thing you're going to see in the movie. Is probably where it starts off with some, like the first, I don't want to spoil it, but the first thing you see is probably the worst gore-wise, and just maybe, I don't know, just more, maybe it's worse with what you think is going on than what you see, but that's probably when the film is at its most gruesome, I guess you could say. And then, of course, we go on with freaky things happening, and the goat's doing stuff, and kind of really, some very dark symbolism throughout the film. And it's not going to be for everyone. This, I can see where people expecting something like, I don't know, The Conjuring or Insidious, or even one of the Saw films, somebody that's accustomed to that being in theaters, going, seeing this thinking it's going to be something along those lines, and being completely shocked with what they end up seeing, because it definitely isn't nothing like those. But that's not a bad thing. I think it's good. Now, sometimes I'm hit and miss on the real artsy stuff, but this one, I think, you know, in maybe the slow nature of it, it still keeps it extremely interesting and extremely creepy during those portions. So, because of that, I give it like almost the highest regard you can get for a horror film, and I think it's one of the best of the year right off the bat. Like I said, it's got to have some extras though. It's got an audio commentary with the director Robert Eggers, who I think is actually doing the Nosferatu remake now, which is probably going to be along the lines of this in a lot of ways. The Witch, a primal folklore, a Salem panel Q&A, and a design gallery. And one other thing I do want to mention about this is, if you do watch it, you may want to turn on your subtitles, because these guys are hardcore to the core about speaking in Old English, and at times it can be kind of hard to understand. I guess some people in theaters probably had trouble with that. You didn't really know what these guys are saying all the time, because it's so odd now to hear like full-fledged, proper Old English. So if that's an issue, then subtitles is a must for this. But like I said, one of the better ones of the year as far as I am concerned. I don't really know too much about the whole satanic side of things, but as a horror movie, it does what it needs to do, and that's all that matters in my opinion.